So there are a lot of Musou games, you know, Dynasty Warriors, Samurai Warriors, and all the games inspired by them. Well, this is one of those inspired games, let's say. And it's probably the worst the genre has to offer, but that doesn't mean it's completely without value. This game was originally released as part of the Simple 2000 series in Japan, which is a series of games not known for its quality in particular, but rather known for its uniqueness in the subjects it tackles. This one, however, is basically just for Musou addicts who did not get enough Musou from the actual Musou brand games. This game does make some attempts to distance itself from other Musou games, which is why it's worthwhile at all. That's not to say it's great or even good, but at least it tries something. This is the prologue chapter, and our goal is just to kill 100 enemies. You know, the game's just basically saying, hey, familiarize yourself with the basics, why don't you? Unlike in most Musou games and most Musou-inspired games, we only have one attack button, but which attack we perform is dependent upon which direction we're holding the control stick at the time. Kinda like in Tamsoft's other game Onechanbara. For example, holding back while we attack will fling enemies in the air, and this is probably the game's most interesting mechanic right here, the lightning raid. By holding down circle, we can lock onto enemies and attack and kill them automatically as we release it. The longer we hold down circle, the more enemies we can lock onto, and the more hits we can get in on single enemies, which gives us a greater chance of killing them. I'm stuck on the geometry. The challenge in using Lightning Raid comes from the fact that in order to charge it up any decent amount of time, you better not have any enemies behind your back or they'll just stab you and interrupt it, and waste your gauge in the process. Something else I'm sure you've noticed by now is that this game is kinda slow compared to other games like it, and that's because this game places heavy emphasis on grinding to improve your character's abilities. This winds up being the game's greatest strength and its greatest detriment because, wow, you have to grind a lot for a game that's essentially only an hour long at most without the grinding. But on the other hand, the stats you can upgrade are kinda neat. Like for some reason you can upgrade the range of your sword by leveling up, which is way more useful than it sounds in this game. And the reason having extra range is so important is because, as I'm sure you've noticed by now, our character isn't particularly mobile. But in addition to that, you're probably wondering, hey, this game looks super easy. Why would you need to grind at all? Why can't you just use the base stats? Well, the game gets way more difficult as things go on, including a huge difficulty spike in the last 2 levels in particular. And by more difficult, I mean, not only do the enemies attack more frequently, but some of them have nearly as much health as the commanders. This huge difficulty wall ensures that what was a 1-hour game at most becomes a 4-hour game due to excessive grinding. I think I've shown you all I can about the most basic combat, so let's move past the prologue stage. This is, of course, the post-battle stat screen, which shows you exactly how well you did and how much experience you get for it. And you can see right here the stats that get upgraded as a result. And I would like to have more dexterity, but beggars can't be choosers. So let's go tackle, one of the later stages. Gonna skip ahead just a bit to get to the important part. Enemy commanders are easy to identify on the battlefield due to the purple smoke that completely shrouds them for some reason. This is useful though because you want to be able to pick them apart from the normal enemies. The ideal way to battle with a commander is to stay as far away as possible and make use of that range stat you've been grinding. The commanders easily do the most damage out of any enemies in the game for obvious reasons. And the game accounts for this difficulty by making it really easy to grind items out of normal enemies. That's where the lightning raid comes in handy. It's not just for show, it's so that way you have a quick way to grab pickups. So early on in the game, the normal enemies seem deceptively like walking power-up packets, but later in the game they become almost as difficult as the commanders, if not more so, because they can interrupt all of your attacks while you're trying to focus on that one guy you really want to get rid of. Now, you might figure that being skilled enough would get you around these issues, but the game places a really big emphasis on stats. If you don't have your defense upgraded, a single combo from a commander can pretty much obliterate you. And when all of the enemies begin attacking more frequently, it's impossible to avoid every blow. A big reason that a lot of people seem to enjoy Musou games is because it's really satisfying to grind. I can't say the same for me, but if that's what you enjoy about the genre, well, this game has a whole lot of that. And I'm not trying to say I don't love Musou games and hack and slashes, because oh boy, I do, but this game in particular places almost no focus on the skill of the player, if that makes any sense. But you know, the game is just a few steps from being completely mindless, and if you want to turn your brain off and hack and slash this stuff for a couple hours, I guess you could do worse. In the end, I suppose if you've exhausted literally all of your other Musou options, then this does something slightly different, you know. In conclusion, go buy Hyrule Warriors.